Good morning. It's September 22nd. This is to my liberal friends. This past Friday, the Senate failed to advance a funding bill that would keep the government open while senators continue to negotiate on a final funding bill. And that leaves them at a stalemate, and the losers in this political spat are the American people, as it becomes increasingly likely that come October 1st, we'll see the federal government, for the most part, quit operating. Now, there's a very famous country song by Kenny Rogers called The Gambler. And I think some of the lyrics in that song are pretty sage advice to those politicians trying to make political points. One of the verses says, quote, "Every gambler knows that the secret to surviving is knowing what to throw away and knowing what to keep. Because every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser. And the best that you can hope for is to die in your sleep." And the final advice in the song is, know when to walk away, know when to run, end quote. Well, Democrats would be wise to keep this advice in mind. They're under tremendous pressure from the left wing of the party to resist anything that Donald Trump supports. The Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, did fold last March, and now he's put himself in a position where he has to abandon his principles and accede to the demands of those on the left wing of the party. During a previous fight over keeping the government open, Schumer had this to say when he was in the majority, quote, "The only way to avoid a shutdown is through bipartisanship. So I've urged House Republican leadership to follow the Senate's lead and pass bipartisan appropriations bills. We cannot afford the brinkmanship or hostage-taking we saw from House Republicans earlier this year when they pushed our country to the brink of default to appease the most extreme members of their party," end quote. Now, I would read those words back to Schumer because he's allowing the most extreme members of his party to dictate his actions. Democrats will undoubtedly convince themselves that while they likely can't force Trump's hand, they can win the battle of public opinion. And according to a report last week, they plan to do this by making the shutdown, quote, about health care, which they bet will win over voters. That's a high-risk wager. Matt Glassman, a political scientist at Georgetown University and one of the top experts on congressional procedure, points out the party responsible for a government shutdown always loses the public opinion battle as well as the policy fight that they used to create the shutdown in the first place. But the liberal wing of the Democratic Party has convinced themselves that this is an opportunity to direct public attention to what they claim are the excesses and failures of the Trump administration. This is, in my opinion, wishful thinking. Democrats can maintain their message during the shutdown, but ultimately they have zero control over how the public views their actions. What they will see is the media focusing their attention on those hurt by the government shutdown. Many in the press will portray this action as just another Washington political melodrama. Republicans will muster a majority of votes, and Democrats will use the filibuster to prevent them from passing a spending bill. That will leave little doubt in the minds of the public, and that means voters, about who cut off government spending. And you can bet many of the media will be reminding the public that Democrats wanted to end the filibuster in the previous Congress when they controlled the Senate. As I mentioned, Democrats are using cuts to the subsidies now available in Obamacare. This is what they're hanging their hat on, and Republicans have already indicated they're willing to maintain those subsidies. Democrats could claim victory, but who would notice since the benefits are already in place? What Democrats are doing is forcing Republicans to do something that they're willing to do so as to avoid a huge political problem in the midterm elections. Now, if I were Republicans, I would immediately bring the appropriations bills that fund the Department of Defense and Homeland Security to the floor and dare the Democrats to filibuster those bills. Would Senate Democrats be willing to filibuster a bill that funds the military and the pay of those men and women serving? There are other tactics Republicans could use. They could accede to the Democrats' demands on health care subsidies, but then leave out funding for Environmental Protection Agency and the Labor Department, and more specifically, the Education Department, which they want to eliminate anyway. The problem for Democrats is they're under intense pressure from their own supporters to stand up and resist Trump. This is part of the reason Democrats are so unpopular right now. Rank and file Democrats desperately want to see party leaders stand up to the president, and after the Senate Democrats failed to shut down the government in the spring, they all see this as their chance to finally draw a line in the sand. And that's not a minor consideration for congressional Democrats. Maintaining support of the party's political coalition is essential, and another surrender to Trump would be sure to bring fresh calls for a new Democratic leadership on the Hill. But the sad reality for Democrats is that Congress, the minority, has few arrows in its quiver. Resisting the Trump administration sounds like a good plan to those on the left, but it's a lot easier than done. Lining up on the wrong side of the basic 80-20 issues that the far left demands their leadership do is only costing them in popularity at the ballot box. Democrats at the state and local level are realizing this, and they moderate their positions on these hot-button issues, and that allows them to be competitive in their races. You would think the national leadership would learn this, but they don't seem to be listening. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.